It just disappeared over here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the magical tea talks and coffee talks with Cindy Hernandez and myself. Welcome, Cindy.
Hi.
How are you?
How are we doing?
How's your morning going so far?
Super good. Super good. We just had a little mini conversation with Val, and we were just talking about what topic can we talk about today, because there's so much that we can go off by. And so one of the topics that I think we're gonna, definitely touch on is mirrors, and how everybody in our life is a mirror, and the lessons are there for both of us, and the person who is the mirror and the other person behind it, right?
Yeah, it's so mirrors and reflections are sometimes people get it a little like tangled up, like they can see the lesson in the mirror, but when you are there being the one that's reflecting some back to somebody, sometimes they don't see the lesson in that, and they're just like, well, that's just about them. Yeah. And so it's a great conversation to have, and it was sparked by a conversation I was actually having with somebody else in another group, which made me think about a conversation I had in my personal life. And I was like, this is perfect, a perfect conversation to start our morning tea and coffee. I'm the coffee drinker, by the way.
I'm the tea.
What does your mug say?
Create your own magic.
Oh, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. All about creating my own magic and inspiring others to create their own magic. So love that on the mug.
Yeah, so much goodness. Yeah, so did you want to get started on what you wanted to share, or should I share, or how do you want to
why don't you start sharing your experience with mirrors and reflections so far?
Okay, so I'm going to get started with my mom has been a big mirror for me, and also a reflection, because in the beginning of my going through this whole transformation and creating my own magic, one of the things that came up constantly was my mom not seeing what it was that I had to offer, or even not that she didn't care, but she just didn't see it the way that I did. So that was a big thing for me, because I had, and we all of the people that come from a cultural background, it's one of those things that our parents don't see, because they've grown up a certain way. They have certain things that they do. So for me, my mom, she just, and my dad too, they would just not see what it is that I'm trying to create, what it is that I'm trying to do, or they didn't even bother to, I didn't bother. This was a big lesson for me this week, was I didn't bother explaining to them. So that was my reflection. That was something that I needed to learn, because before it was I would push it on them, oh, they don't understand. They don't see it the way that I see it. So it reflected back at me, and it was this is something for me. It had nothing to do with them. It had to do with me, because I wasn't expressing myself. I wasn't explaining what I had to do, or what I had, what I was trying to do, or anything in life where you're not explaining things correctly, or you're not having that communication. That is a reflection of you. Where are you not communicating enough?
I love that. I absolutely love that, because I've actually had a similar experience, which actually tied into an experience I was telling you about earlier. But I had a similar experience where somebody said something to me, and because I was like, man, why are they not getting this? I don't understand. And then I realized with the response that they gave is that I wasn't communicating it in a way, I was communicating that made sense to me, because I was coming from my perspective, but I wasn't necessarily taking in their perspective. And communicating what I needed to communicate, but in a way that they could understand it. Because we all
Yeah.
see, and it's not about like, because it's not about like changing your words to have a better outcome. It is about expressing yourself, true to yourself, but also in a way that others will understand you. And it's like knowing your audience, you know, like when you're a coach, you're doing any, it's, you got to know your audience and who you're talking to. So if you're talking to a certain audience and then you're acting like you're talking to another audience, it's not gonna, the message isn't gonna land. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good, I had that happen to me a couple of times last week actually, where it was like, oh, I wasn't communicating it so great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
Definitely.
last night I had I was in one of my group sessions, and at sorry, it's really crazy windy out here, and all of a sudden this like random object just started flying by the window, and I'm on the 10th floor. I was like, what the heck? Um, but I was, he had asked for feedback, and I was giving him feedback. And as I was giving him feedback, and I said, thank you. I said, thank you for being such a great teacher for me. Because one of the things that was feeling very frustrated with people out here. And I said to him, where within you do you feel frustrated? And when you
Yeah.
figure that out, then you won't see it as much on the outside world. And
Yeah.
and so then I said those words to him, and those that have followed me recently last week, you notice I was going through a lot of anger and frustration. I actually even did a whole podcast about it that went out today. And I'm still kind of figuring out where it's all coming from.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like we're always figuring things out. It's like we're not always like this always happens. Like it's gonna happen. And it's just about noticing it and noticing what the lesson is that you need to learn there, and what it is that's reflecting, or what it is that you're seeing, what's mirroring there. And so also there was another thing that came up that was a mirror too. Oh, I was reading also in a thing about dreams, like, right? So our dreams sometimes mirror our inside, well, actually most of the time, they mirror like what's going on inside internally. And we often don't see it that way. We just think like, oh, this is a random dream. This is so weird. But it's deeper than that. It's like it's like what inside of you is conflicting together that you're not seeing. And that's the message that's there. And
You
that's weird.
You are so right. I didn't even mention this to you before our talks. I had a dream last night, and it went into the other conversation that I actually told you about so I was having a conversation with somebody, and something I said triggered them. And I didn't really know this. It went on for like a couple of days, and then we had a conversation about it. And I said, thank you for letting me know, because even though what triggered them was a part of them, I could still be mindful of how I say things to not trigger them, and still be able to express myself. And then in this conversation, I said, I think part of this is a reflection of fear, like the fear that the person had, but also a fear within me. And I said, I'm going to tell you why. I said, I had a dream last night. So I had a dream last night. And in my dream, it was me and two other people, and we were going to save somebody. And they were on this higher floor. And we're going, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, here these people are coming. And we all split up, and I went into the room, and I hid in the bathtub, and I like pulled the shower curtain around me. And the person came in, they didn't see me. And then another person came back, and they sat down in the tub, and they were like, did you really think you would get away without being seen? And I was like, no. So then we go, and somehow all three of us got captured. but something happened. Somebody called a distraction, and I was able to get away. And I go to the elevators, and I'm in the elevators, and I'm going, where's the button? I don't see the button for the floor that I have to go. And the guy next to me goes, well, what are you looking for? I said, well, I have to go all the way to the top floor. I need to go to heaven. And he goes, just push H, which is like right in the middle. It's not even, it wasn't at the top. It was like one of the middle buttons. And I was like, but it's the top floor. He goes, trust me, H is for heaven. I'm like, okay. So I do that. But instead of going up, we went down, and he got off. And then all these people started to get on. And I'm going, guys, gotta hurry up. I gotta get up. Gotta get up. I gotta get up there. I have to rescue the person. And when I woke up, I was like, wow, there was so much fear in that. And for so many different aspects, you know, so much fear. Because whenever I'm being chased in a dream, to me, it's fear. So like being afraid somebody's going to catch me. And then the whole elevator, I live on the 10th floor. So with everything going on with the coronavirus, you know, the elevators, especially in my building where it's very old, doesn't have a lot of circulation. So the air just stays stagnant in there. And we only have one elevator right now in our building that's been working for a week. And yesterday I got on the elevator with an older man, and the door opened, and he's like, there's too many people on, you can't get on. And so I guess that triggered part of my fear of the same thing, of being in an elevator with all the people and having that. But it was such a reflection of my outer world, of what I was going through.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
There's still another part in there, but I haven't quite figured that out yet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so good.
So go ahead.
Do you have another mirror moment?
Do I have another mirror moment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it happens all the time. Whether we are consciously aware of it at first. When I first heard the concept about this, the mirror concept, is everybody's a mirror of ourselves, I remember going, that ain't true. And I'm like, that's not true. Like, how can this person be a mirror for me? Like, I'm nothing like this person.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started to realize it's not about like everything somebody does is a mirror of us. It's the part that really triggers us. And when I say triggers, it's not like it can trigger us in a way where we're like, oh my God, you are so beautiful. You're such an amazing person. So if you're saying that to somebody, that's something within yourself, because that's what you're seeing. So you're reflecting that part of yourself onto that person.
Yeah.
And then it could be the other way where it's like, no, that person's wrong. You know, like they're, you know, they're coming from a place of ego. And then that's when you got to check in and go, okay, where am I coming from a place of ego? So it's not just those lessons of what we have to learn in our shadow selves. It's also what we have to learn in our fun.
Yeah. It's in all the aspects.
Yeah. I had that post that I did, and I talked about playfulness, and I can be a super serious person, and sometimes I can forget to play, but I like to surround myself with people that like to play so that they can remind me. And by reminding me is watching them have fun is a reflection of something that I have to do. So then I jump in and I have fun. See, it's a positive aspect. To me, it's all positive.
Yeah, it is. It is. I remember when I was in NLP, when I was doing my training, one of the things that they do is like, you're in a small group, right? So within that small group, you might not, you know, get along with everybody, but it's also figuring out like, I love this because it made me actually realize that, you know, we can all get along. Like we're all human. We're all like, it's all natural. So one of the things that we did in the group was I had a small group of friends, and whenever somebody or something was like, I don't think like I'm relatable to that person, but it made us curious. It made us curious, and we were like, what in that person is reflecting on me that I can actually figure out. And it was a beautiful moment because we didn't like, it wasn't coming from like a space of like, it was coming from a little bit of judgment because we were like, that we're not relatable, like we're not close, like. But then it also made us think like, let's get to know her, or let's get to know him, so that we can figure something out, so that we can all get along. Because it doesn't matter, like that person doesn't have to see eye to eye with me. That person doesn't have to understand what I'm coming from. But if we're open, we can all get along in that way where we don't have to judge each other. It's like, okay, well, that's how that person is, but what in there is reflecting in me, and what is that person mirroring in me? And it's a beautiful thing when you can do that, because then there is no judgment. It's like, it, you can get along.
I loved how you said bringing up that whole judgment part, because that's what it like a lot of times comes down to. Like, what are you judging in that person?
Mm-hmm.
And then look within and show where you're judging within yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big big realization right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other part is changing what did I say? Changing the energy around it. You know, you can't change the other person. So I think you brought up your mom earlier. Like you can't change how your mom is. Only your mom can do that, right? But you can change that relationship to what your mom does that triggers you.
Yeah.
And you can do that either by like going within and figure out what that is, or coming to the acceptant part too, of like, I accept my mom for who she is and the lessons that she has taught me. And then
Yeah.
when she does do that thing that she used to do, you don't even notice.
Mm-hmm. And it gets easier. And that's the thing, like when you're first beginning to like, you know, start to live your life on your terms, it's like a lot of people have this. It's like they're like, "Ugh, but my mom and dad, they just don't understand. They trigger me all the time, and I just need to get away." So then they're creating this thing where they're like, "Oh, I need to get away from them in order for me to, you know, grow." But you also have to know that you're gonna have to communicate with them eventually. They're always gonna be in your life, well, at least, you know, for the time period. But you want to have that relationship, because if not, then you're creating actually more like pain in your heart, more like, I don't know, suffering, rather than creating that freedom. Because when you're trying to avoid something, and that's what happens, people try to avoid their parents. And this was something that I tried to do too. It's like, I need to block my mom off because she's blocking my manifestations. And that's not true. It's like, okay, how can I come to terms with understanding where my mom's coming from? One, that she didn't grow up in this world, so this is new to her. And if I don't explain it to her, then she's not going to understand anything. So it's like also understanding where they're coming from and not taking it too personal. And that's the thing, we all take it too personal. My parents take it too personal by judging what I'm doing, and then I take it too personal by, you know, making them like this thing that is stopping me.
Mm-hmm.
So that happens a lot.
It's coming to the realization that it's not about you, it's about them.
Yeah.
Like, you say who you are, and how they react is about them and not about you.
Yeah.
You know, it's a, and you go through this in many different ways. And like mine was about like coming out. And when I came out, it was, there was so much fear of how everybody was going to react. And I was judging people's reactions before I even said anything. And then when later on in life, when I actually got comfortable with me, because that was part of it, the lesson for me, but it was also realizing it that, like, however somebody reacts is their perspective, where they're coming from. So if somebody is judging me for who I am, it's because their perspective is where it's at, whether they don't believe it's right, or they have fear around something, or whatever it is. They don't have enough knowledge and understanding. So it's like this unknown. So there's like, different fears, or just what people have learned and heard from other people, and taking that and projecting it onto somebody else.
Yeah.
Just, you can't control what other people do.
Mm-hmm.
There is no control.
Yeah. And so this happens too, like in your business, like when people mirror your business too, because this was a big realization for me lately. It's like, I didn't want to, explain to people what it is that I do, or how I do things, and how different my massage and my mindset go together, and how you're not going to find that somewhere else. Like, I didn't want to explain that to people, but I noticed that I was mirroring, like, my clients were mirroring me, because I was afraid to explain that. So every time that I said something, they would be like, what is she talking about? Or like, that expression that I didn't want to happen would happen.
Mm-hmm.
But because I was already like mirroring that, like I was being that, I was being scared, I was being not, I wasn't explaining things, and I wasn't doing things the way that I should. And so the people would mirror me, and it was like a big realization. I was like, this is stopping my business. Like, we need to change this.
So what are some of the tips or techniques you use to help change it?
So one, realization is the first thing, because you can't change things if you're not noticing them. Like, if you think that everything is okay, then you're never going to change. So one, realization. When I realize things, then I'm like, okay, what can I do to shift this so that it doesn't happen again? And then I have to be that person that I am trying to embody, rather than the fearful one that I'm trying to avoid. So embodiment is the second one. And then just doing things differently, and being consistent about it, and noticing things when they happen, so that you can shift.
Yeah, that's the last piece, is like the key, is being in that moment. In that
Yeah.
moment when all of a sudden, because we have gotten to the point where, you stepped away from a conversation, and you're like, then you have the awareness, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is why, and then you embody it. But when you can get the awareness embodiment in the moment, it's like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll be like talking, and somebody be like, you're like, oh wait, that's me, not them. Let me check in. Okay. And then you can like course correct right there in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the big key to me is, the more that you start to become aware of these mirrors and reflections in your life, in your business, in your personal relationships, within yourself,
Yeah.
the more that you can actually start making those corrections in that moment,
Yeah.
because you're just so much super aware.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good stuff.
Really good stuff. Good conversation so far this morning.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to leave for anybody? Any last tips? How would you, that's the last piece for you, right? It's just doing it in the moment, right?
Yeah. And one of the things that I also do when, like, if I don't know, like, I'll take the anger and frustration that I've been feeling, and I can look I can see outward and I know a few things of why I feel this anger and frustration. But sometimes it doesn't, it's more than just one thing, right? More than one thing that might be compiling it. And I And so, like, if you haven't quite gotten to the root of what it is, meditation is one that really works for me. And sometimes I do meditation in what I call dream state. So, like, I go into a dream state to get my information. So, I'll like set an alarm, or I don't even have to set an alarm. Like, I like naturally now wake up at 6 o'clock, and like from 6 to 7 or something is when I do this like dreamscape, and I go in there and it's just being conscious and aware in your dreams. But for some people, journaling is a good way too.
Yeah.
You know, or I like to call it automatic writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good way. And then having people that you can actually talk things out with.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things for me is like communication, because when I'm talking, I start to see things. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, little Cindy, you need some healing.
You need some healing. Yeah. And it's great. It's great to have people to talk to. I'm sure your husband's a great one for you.
Yeah, they're all like, I have my husband, I have a lot of siblings, so like even my sister is one of the biggest people too. It's like I can just talk to them freely, and just when things come up, sometimes it comes up with them, and then I have to look at it and be like, I'm sorry I said that. But that was my little me, my little Cindy. Yeah.
And because some other people have great outside perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have surround myself with a lot of different people, and some of my closest friends aren't necessarily in this spiritual world that I am in, but sometimes they talking things over allows me to look at things from different perspectives, and they give me such great insight. I think they're magical people and they're very intuitive, but they don't necessarily do what we do, but they're very naturally intuitive people, and their insight, like, they're like my go-to people, because they're going to allow me to step out of my magical world where I connect to all my ancestors to kind of like see the human experience that sometimes I might miss.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the beauty about it. Like when you can find somebody, and this is why you have your group too, right? Intuitive Heart Healer, because people can communicate there. And it's like, okay, if you're open to the feedback and open to different people's perspective, then it allows you to see things differently, because we all see things differently. And when we can look at things in a different form, then it makes things not so quote unquote bad. It's not bad though. It's like, I don't know another word. What's another word that I can use?
It's just different.
Yeah.
It really is just different. It just is what it is. Yeah. Any other final thoughts before we head out?
Nope, I think we're good. You can actually follow Valerie at Intuitive Heart Healer, and you can follow me at Cinderella Spa. I'm only on Instagram right now. I'm creating a group as well. And then I don't know if we're going to create a group or not.
Yeah, we this is our first one, so we're just kind of exploring. We're going to be back on Thursday at 10:30 on Facebook Live.